Well, and during class, we talk a lot about cultural considerations and how nonverbal communication can vary so much from different culture, different country, different background. And I had the pleasure of watching one of your videos that you sent me of you doing an interview, and you're so poised and graceful. And I'd love to understand, how did you approach cultural considerations, and how did you navigate that dealing with such a diverse audience as well? So not only are you communicating with people, but then you also have an audience that's very diverse and from different cultural backgrounds. So were there any tools or techniques that you used to navigate that?
Honestly, the most important thing that I've learned throughout my life is that a smile goes a long, long way. And it is a great way to connect, not just with those that are around you, with your team or individuals that you're interviewing or your audience. It goes around. Also, you get a sense of energy yourself, bringing good vibes into the whole setting. I picked up on a lot of body languages that people have in different countries, and I've been fortunate enough to be in many have visited more than 50 countries and lived in more than 12 countries or more. So it's given me a sense of better understanding of how people approach things. I also try to dive into cultures by experiencing the traditions. I usually wear the traditional clothing. I wore a kimono throughout. I experienced the whole dressing up as a complete, like, transforming into a geisha for 5 hours of sitting in a. So I felt that was really important. But when, like you said, the video of me doing an interview, I think you just have to ground yourself and recognize why you're there in the first place, and what is it that you're trying to do, what information you're trying to grasp from the individual that's speaking, what are the questions that you think others might be curious to know, not generally what are the questions that is politically correct, or what are the questions that are going to fit the agenda, but the questions that might push the boundaries in some way, but sticking to the person, respecting that person's space and privacy and values as well as yours. So I think it's really important to always also listen and be patient, and give those individuals a space. One thing that I really recognized from your class was the phrase you used often, the power of pause, which was incredibly, I could totally relate to that in many ways. And I've used it, and I kept remembering that phrase from your class. And the power of pause really have helped me doing just not only conducting interviews, but communicating with people and allowing them to respond and understand and really connect with you in many ways.
Well, I love that. And thank you so much, because I do believe that our world goes awful fast. And I think the power of pause can be so helpful on so many levels right now, especially as we just keep moving faster and faster and faster in these Zoom rooms. And I love what you said about a smile. And I there's some wonderful pieces of curriculum and things that I work with people online, communication and being in a virtual world. And it's so funny, because I'll say, some people have resting angry face and they don't know it. And now they're figuring it out because they're on this online this online platform. And I think that it's great that you not only put the power of a smile, but also how that connects us, that shift in our own internal energy can really cause us to be able to connect on all levels, whether we speak the language or we don't. And thank you for that. What do you think influenced you the most on how you conducted your interviews? Because I love that you say you got into the costume and the culture. I won't say costume, it was actually the dressing. And I saw pictures of you. It was absolutely gorgeous, and the surroundings. And it was just so, thank you for sharing that with me. But when you're in that moment in the interview and you're conscious of just even a gesture that could offend somebody, or a word, or how do you navigate that? What's kind of the biggest thing that, besides the power of pause, was there anything else?
I think when you conduct an interview, there's a lot that you try to pick up from what the individual is doing, the way they're sitting, the way they're listening to you. Are they distracted? Are they not? I ask questions at times that are open-ended and some that are not, because I would like to give them that sense of see how they want to approach the question and if there's the direction that they like to take the question. And sometimes I ask a very direct, I expect a very direct answer, and I keep going back to getting that direct answer, because a lot of people, depending on what you do in the journalistic world, it could even be in sports, that some people want to redirect and walk away from actually answering your question. So that is a challenge. But I think it's really tricky, and I'm not nearly perfect. I'm trying to and working hard as and gaining more skills doing this. And I try to be, sometimes get to their level. If let's say I'm speaking to a child, I make sure that I ground myself and go to their level and have give them the sense of autonomy, maybe hold a microphone, maybe kind of have them ask me a question. I try to have certain icebreakers, make a comment, make a joke, talk about just what we are doing there and how amazing the experience is. So in Japan, for instance, a lot of us, I make conversations around obviously food and weather and simple things, but also deeper stuff in like, how are you communicating with your family? Are they responding? Because a lot of family members couldn't really be there for the athletes. They couldn't really come across. So it's really giving them a space as much as you're expecting, and making sure that that you're allowing the sort of interview to kind of take its course. But obviously you have a mission to go into anything, but just have to remember to be human at the end. I think that's really, really, really has been vital for me. How far do I want to push this? This person has a life. I don't know why they're hiding. I don't know why they want to share, or I don't even know why they want to open up. But they must have a reason. As much as I have a reason to ask these questions, they have a reason. And maybe they just are waiting for that person to ask that question. And we've noticed it a lot, especially with like cases such as mental health struggles with athletes, or even politicians, or anyone really. There are certain subjects that they're just waiting and desperately for someone to ask them, how are you? Whereas many other individuals want to defer and not answer that, and they have their reasons. And I think a sense of respect should be carried out in whatever you do now, even when you're not on air, even when the record button is not on, the level of respect should remain on. So
well, I just want to share, I love that you brought up an interview with a little child, because the one thing that I remember about you was the amazing relationship that you have with your niece. And you brought that to class. And I just think as a woman in a profession and what you do and how well you've done it, you're such a great example to her. So I'm excited for her to hear her auntie on the podcast when this gets out. And I think what you bring is authenticity, professionalism. You marry the two, and then you stay true to your morals, your ethics, ethical values, but you also elicit dialogues, and that can't be easy, especially being around so many different people and so many different cultures. But I was always fascinated by the fact that you had lived in so many places and you had already adapted to so many different cultures and ways of living. And I just applaud you for that. I want to thank you, because there were so many different facets of yourself that you brought to the class. And I even hear it today, just the way that you have such an incredible foundation of listening and being authentic, but also staying true to your own values, but respecting others. And I think that's in journalism, that's a beautiful combination, because we do want to know what's going on in the world, but we want to make sure it's done right. And I think you bring that. And the stories that even you've shared in our class have always left a mark on my heart and in my mind. So I thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you had the opportunity to come back and guest teach in my class, what's one thing that you would like to share and teach a session on?
I don't know if anyone can really top what you do. So it's really tricky. It's a lot of pressure. But if I would be on the sideline commenting, I think I would echo many things that you have already glanced upon and introduced to your students. One is that to make that connection of speaking from the heart, and as much as outline is important, as much as your mission or what your questions is, as much as how much you want the information to go across, I think it's really important that the words that you choose comes from the heart, and you lead from the heart as well. You take your mind with you, don't forget that. Don't say things you might regret, but and some days are easier to connect with the soul, and sometimes it's not. It's all about, I think, in some ways, connecting and removing that sort of veil, and connecting between the outside world and your inner soul. So I would talk more about that, and sort of share with the class or the audience how it's important to ground yourself and be humble. And I can't stress enough how many people I have noticed in my lifetime and my work who have lost themselves on stage, who have lost themselves in front of the cameras, who have been so preoccupied with the tension that the words that they were kind of mentioning out loud was making, without really connecting to the words anymore. Now I'm really lucky because I do come from a very solid, loving family, and my mom and dad and sister and brother always kind of echoed that, and they're obviously older than me. I'm the youngest, so I've watched them. But I think in my career, I keep reminding myself, doesn't matter what happens, that I, like you said, stay true to myself and speak from the heart, and try to bring stories that can make an impact, and that can be meaningful, not just for the world, for other people, but for the individual itself that I'm talking about. And I don't see stories as just topics or things that I can get more recognition about, but that it's important and must be heard. Far too many things in life are ordinary. And I think, don't let your words be ordinary. Don't let your I guess in some ways your mission, your outlook in life to be ordinary. And I think a lot of people in my life have been confused by the number of things I've done, and they sometimes ask me, well, why did you leave medical life and come to journalism, and why do you do sports? And I said, to be perfectly honest, I've married all of them together, and for me, one is related to the other. And I think I can make a bigger impact, not just for my community, but for around the world in some way. Maybe just one person, but still, I always go by the quote that I'm just one person. I can't do everything, but I'm still one person. I can do something. So that something, make sure it's memorable and make sure it's from the heart.
Well, thank you so much. And there's not much that I can add to that, because I want to just let that resonate with our audience. But what I do want to say is I'm going to prescribe you a power of pause so you can catch up on some of that sleep that I know you're still not getting. Yeah. So I hope that you get to take some time and relax, but you have an incredible platform, and your experience, your message, and what you're going to do, I know, is change the world. And you know that that's my motto, is I want to change the world one presentation at a time, or one interview at a time, however you choose to go do that in your public speaking. So I'm thrilled, and I really appreciate you being here with us today and sharing such an incredible platform. I wish you all the best. I'm also going to expect that you stay in touch so I can hear about your next journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to connect this way and speak more about my experience that I had in your class, and also in this crazy world that we live in, and a beautiful world that we live in. So thank you so much. And for sure, without a doubt, I'll be in touch as always.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you. And until next time, have a great day.